I'm Catherine Beals. I'm a third grade teacher here in Warren County, and I'm currently studying about gifted children and their needs. So I'm here today to do a presentation for you about three major components of gifted children. So I just want to start out with saying that as teachers, we're continually met with the challenge of educating students with a variety of needs and backgrounds, and in response to these needs, history has brought a lot of educational legislation to the table. This legislation arises with the intent to advocate for the education of students with exceptional needs, be it special education or those belonging to minority or gap populations. Unfortunately, though, there's a group of students that have been overlooked by even the most well-meaning educators and administrators, and that's our gifted students. So outside of that math and science boom we saw during the Kennedy space race, there's been little emphasis on gifted education in terms of funding and legislation. So it's crucial that we dismiss this myth that gifted students will be fine on their own and start to advocate intentionally for their needs. So, of course, advocating comes by first understanding gifted students more deeply than we do now. So, the contents of this presentation is just to provide an overview of three major areas of gifted development and provide you some insight as educators for strategies that you could use to meet their social, emotional, and educational needs in your classroom. So, I'm going to jump right in and go ahead and talk about their social needs. First, I want to cover intensities. Intensities are often called overexcitabilities, and they're very common in gifted students. The most common types are psychomotor, sensual, emotional, intellectual, and imaginative. Research describes these overexcitabilities and how they're evident in gifted students. For example, a student with a psychomotor excitability, they may be out of their seat continuously, drumming their pencil, speaking rapidly. But then a student with essential excitability might be highly sensitive to loud, crowded, or overstimulated areas. Texture, sounds, and environment have a huge impact on these students. The same way, many gifted students have an emotional intensity. These students often have a heightened sense of right and wrong, are highly focused on justice, and have strong empathy for others. Well, the intellectually intense gifted child is usually an academically focused student. They're really hard to keep challenged. Your imaginative student, they're highly creative, and their imagination might take the place of reality at times. They might lie as they're making up some of these imaginative scenarios in their head. So I've got a video for you for my favorite intellectually intense student. I think you will enjoy.
Hi, my name is Matthew, and welcome to my garage. This is my new Goldberg machine. Let me show you how it works. I'll light the incense stick, making the smoke alarm go off. The dog will run with this rope pull. Are you gonna run? Lift me if you're gonna run. He'll run. When the ball goes down here, this will go back. So I ball hit down, moving it forward, slam into that balloon. It frightened him, making him poop. Do this with these golf balls. I'll explain to you later. Bye. The fan, which is my dad, will turn on, spinning these I got from the fair. It'll shoot out, hitting his target. Okay, that's it. And now go light the incense stick, and we'll all watch.
Dude, Matt, what the heck is this?
It's my new Goldberg.
That's my real Goldberg. Look, I have a girl in there with no parents home. I need the incense.
Chase, if you step one more pace closer, I'm gonna light myself on fire.
Relax, dude.
Nobody, get in there.
Hey, when are you coming back in the house?
I'll be here in a second.
Wait, is that a Rube Goldberg machine? Who built it?
Me, and raise my hand, but I'm upside down, so you can't really tell.
So, as you can see, intensities aren't a bad thing. They do present unique challenges for gifted students and the educators who teach them, but they don't have to carry this negative connotation. In fact, research mentions that the intellectually and emotionally intense facet of a gifted child is usually a huge contributor to their creative mind. Research notes that intensities in gifted children are often what leads to their insightful and their innovative work. So, for example, a gifted student with a psychomotor intensity, he could channel it from something negative, like maybe an ADHD diagnosis, to something more positive, like intense task commitment, like the student we just saw here. With that in mind, though, it's important to understand that intensities must be channeled to ensure it enhances the gifted student's gift and does not wreak havoc on their emotional and social and academic development. So here are some strategies we can put into place to help students with these intensities use them to nurture their gift. So first, we want to ensure that they receive interventions through the help of counselors. Counselors are a major resource for these students. They coordinate preventative interventions. They can help students understand, cope with, and ultimately thrive because of their intensity. For example, counselors can facilitate groups that explicitly teach coping skills for the stress or peer conflict that their intensity might bring. In the same way, counselors can provide instruction on relaxation techniques to use when intensities begin to feel uncontrollable. Counselors can coordinate therapeutic and preventative groups such as discussion panels. These can be filled with people who provide refreshing insight into the gifted student and how to channel their passions and their intensities, maybe even into a career. Counselors are able to assist in setting up interventions such as bibliotherapy groups. These groups study literature that focus on gifted individuals, and the characters in these novels are often processing the same inner conflicts that are pertinent to the intensities that gifted students are learning to manage. So collaborating with counselors could also be huge in finding a mentor for a young gifted student. Mentors that are gifted themselves can often revive the loss of personal worth that many gifted students struggle with after years in the regular classroom and feeling very different from those around them. So mentors can be older students that share the similar either interest or similar intensities, and it allows them to relate to the young student and what they're currently experiencing. Mentorship can provide feelings of validation for gifted students and help keep them away from that risk of becoming isolated because of their intensity. Also, another intervention that I feel is strongly overlooked is making sure gifted students have time out of the mixed ability classroom and with likability peers. For many of these intensities, scheduled times with students in likability clusters or groups that share the same interests are beneficial emotionally for students. It averts gifted students away from feeling isolated or different, which is a possible side effect of their intensities if we don't give them preventative supports such as those. So that was intensities, but there's other facets of gifted child that are important. I want to talk about motivational needs because a long point of struggle when educating a gifted student is their issue of being unmotivated and underachieving. So many gifted students have many educators have adopted this idea that a student who's not performing or is unmotivated is not gifted, and this is not true. It's important to look deeply into the environmental factors that are influencing a gifted student's motivation and implement some strategies to keep motivation high and underachievement at bay. So I have a video for you to start this section off.
What is here? This thing weighs a ton.
Well, I told you. There's been a measurable increase in workload now that I'm in third grade. It's really cutting into my reading times.
Okay, chicken nuggets, pile popsicle sticks. Oh, an ant farm. I'm sorry, ant cemetery. You got a D on your math test? You don't get D's.
What are you gonna do?
I'll tell you what you're gonna do, Brick. You're gonna study. Math is very important in life. You use math in everything. Oh, even I can't say it like I believe it.
Hey,
Hey, look at this. A D.
Axel, get in here.
This is Brick.
Really? What happened, buddy? You don't get D's.
Okay, so let's talk about why students might underachieve, like Brick did in that little clip. First, I want to talk about one scenario why students might not be motivated to achieve. First, might not be achieving because they're trying to protect their self-concept. Research says that many underachieving gifted students have internalized this idea that smart kids don't have to try hard, and if you do try hard, then you're not smart. Teachers need to realize that many gifted underachievers feel a need to justify their gifted label with continuous success. And sadly, this can train kids to become grade oriented and lose focus on learning and the learning process. So, if performing flawlessly means avoiding challenge, taking easy classes, then there's some gifted students that are going to do that. So, it's crucial that parents, teachers, and administrators collaborate and watch out for those perfectionist behaviors. Watch out for gifted students taking easy classes or that are obsessed with being at the top of their class, and collaborate to support these students. So, collaboration to thwart tendencies towards perfectionism can start with simply finding ways to praise a student's effort over their ability. You need to be careful to avoid praising gifted students for work that has required minimal time and effort on their part. Instead, educators and parents need to celebrate the time and the process students go through to finish a task and avoid discussing the grade that they receive on it. To take it a step further, teachers and parents should collaborate together to actively encourage academic risk-taking, meaning that teachers and parents should celebrate when a student chooses to do something academically difficult and out of the student's comfort zone. Other interventions that could also be beneficial for students struggling with motivation and perfectionism could be time with counselors, mentors, and bibliotherapy groups. Again, another intervention that we've mentioned before. Teachers, counselors, and parents can collaborate together when choosing an appropriate intervention for a gifted child struggling with motivation and perfectionism. But maybe they're not underachieving because of perfectionism. Maybe it's the second scenario, which could be their interest and perceived value. So some students who are not achieving could be doing so because they're not interested and they're not challenged. For example, some underachieving students are what we call selective consumers, and they hold this idea that if a topic is not of value to me, then I do not need to achieve in it, and it drives educators batty. But research suggests that educators in a domain that is of low value to a gifted students just do their best to add some perceived value, maybe tapping into learning styles and processes that the student prefers and enjoys. Research equates this to acting as like a used car salesman, attempting to create some value where maybe none was perceived as being present. For example, if a young gifted student in elementary school loves literature, but is absolutely unmotivated by math, the teacher could add some perceived value by using a learning style they love, maybe it's independent learning, and fill that independent learning process full of math literature and writing opportunities. So I suggest giving the an inventory about their learning style. So the learning style inventory can help educators gain insight into the programs that are considered valuable to a student, allowing you to add that perceived value. So an inventory like this helps the educator know whether to implement direct teaching, technology, discussions, independent studies, projects, whatever it may be. Using a style the student prefers helps the educator tap into the motivation of a student. With that being said, it's important to know the lack of interest in the subject is not the only factor that can cause a lack of motivation. In fact, some gifted students may be interested in the subject, but are so under challenge they are bored and refuse to achieve in it. So with that being said, it's crucial that we discuss another common motivational issue teachers and parents face, and this is the one that I hear the most often, and it's boredom. Content that is well below a student's level is a major cause of boredom, and the side effects are more damaging than you might realize. Let's watch this slide.
The Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the the Great Depression, passed the the tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which raised or raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression. Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone seen this before? The Laffer curve. Anyone know what this says? It says that at this point on the revenue curve.
Now, I know none of us are really that boring, but I think that's how we sound to a lot of gifted kids. In fact, a research study interviewed underachieving and misbehaving gifted students, and I mean students that maybe have some criminal records, that type of misbehaving, and found that a lot of their behavior issues stemmed largely from boredom. To combat the ill effects of boredom, it's crucial we offer gifted students appropriate gifted programs, regardless of their motivation and regardless of their current behavior. Gifted programs provide a learning experience for students that's not always available in the regular classroom. These programs facilitate learning that revolve around the 5 C's that research says are essential when educating a gifted student. That's caring teacher who looks positively on gifted students. Challenge, complexity, choice, and control. Another way teachers and administrators, parents can collaborate to alleviate the effects of boredom is through ensuring gifted students are receiving adequate time, again, out of mixed ability classes and with high ability peers. The rationale behind the strategy stems from the social and emotional stress that the regular classroom can place on a gifted student. In mixed ability classrooms, even when the teacher is trying to implement differentiation to meet a gifted student's needs, many students are still continually bored and under-challenged. In fact, research notes that there's convincing evidence about gifted children that even the most well-intentioned regular ed classroom teacher is unable to modify curriculum more than 20% of the time for these gifted students because of the wide range of needs in that classroom. So this often leaves a gifted student struggling with boredom. Consequently, educators and parents must diligently watch out for signs of boredom and alleviate its damaging effects as soon as possible. When a gifted student begins underachieving, causing disruption, skipping class, misbehaving at school, a student's program and placement components need to be evaluated to ensure rigor, presence of the 5 C's, and to alleviate that issue of boredom. All right, I've got another fun video for you.
This is my 9th sick day this semester. It's getting pretty tough coming up with new illnesses. If I go for 10, I'm probably going to have to barf up a lung. So I better make this one count. The key to faking out the parents is the clammy hands. It's a good non-specific symptom. I'm a big believer in it. A lot of people will tell you that a good phony fever is a deadlock. But you get a nervous mother, you could wind up in a doctor's office. That's worse than school. You fake a stomach cramp, and when you're bent over, moaning and wailing, you lick your palms. It's a little childish and stupid, but then so is high school.
All right, so you can kind of see how a student who's bored in school might start misbehaving. So just watch out for those behaviors. All right, I'm going to switch to my third topic that's probably the most important to us, their cognitive needs. But I've got to stop there and say that through this detailed analysis of their emotional and social needs and their motivational needs, we've already indirectly addressed many of their academic needs. And it makes sense that these elements are intertwined because gifted students are not robots. Their cognitive needs are closely knit with the components of their personality and experience. And for that reason, academic needs can't really be separated from their social and emotional needs. Many of the interventions, academic interventions that a teacher can use have already been suggested indirectly through this discussion of their social, emotional, and motivational needs. So first I want to go back to time with likability peers. We talked about this earlier, but in order to reduce feelings of isolation in gifted students, time with likability classmates was suggested. And while this is obviously a social and emotional intervention aimed at reducing perfectionism and feelings of seclusion, it's an academic intervention as well. Research notes that gifted students in clusters with likability peers are more likely to demonstrate their academic ability without resorting to maladaptive coping strategies, because working with likability peers can provide students with realistic perceptions of their abilities. Additionally, the discussion of motivational needs in gifted students suggested that there are gifted programs that reduce the tendencies of misbehavior and underachievement. Gifted programs and time with likability peers that's not just a motivational intervention, though. Gifted programs double as an academic intervention, providing classrooms that have control, caring, challenge, complexity, and choice, as we discussed before. It's fair to assert then that meeting the academic needs of gifted students cannot be done if you separate it from their social and emotional needs. Here's a fun video for you to show some of the value in putting students with likability peers, at least for some of their educational day.
What happens when two adorable experts meet? You're going to have to watch this.
Today, I'm talking about fruit and vitamins and minerals. Okay? I've done the periodic table. I'm learning geography. I have pineapple stuck in my teeth. A pineapple? I found the bottom one. I'm 5 years old. Me too. So we're the same age. I know. My favorite element is Copernicum. Because that's what I named my dog after. And you know what favorite countries are mine? What? Thailand and Australia. Those are some pretty cool countries. Thank you.
All right, so you have a science expert and a geography expert, but time together really cultivates their gifts. But there's more academic interventions that I haven't mentioned yet. So I just want to go over one huge intervention that I think is coming back into education through these new NGSS standards, but it's inquiry-based and discovery learning. So research suggests that inquiry learning is essential for highly creative gifted students. Research encourages teachers to abandon explicit instruction for these gifted students and instead stage some discovery learning opportunities. Research goes on to support this, indicating that gifted students often perform much better in these unstructured, discovery-oriented, or constructionist type learning environments due to the stimulating cognitive demands. With discovering learning, students employ higher levels of thinking and problem solving that allow them to find solutions creatively. And these aha moments are extremely motivating for students in their academic pursuits. Discovery learning is open-ended by nature, with control and choice in their learning handed over to the students themselves. And this level of ownership further motivates students to reach deeply into their academic potential. As mentioned previously, if boredom or misbehavior begin to arise in gifted students, stop for a moment and take a look at their academic program. Is discovery learning, inquiry learning, something that needs to be added to ensure that the student is successful? So, researchers at the University of Iowa assert that acceleration is also one of the most effective and research-based interventions for addressing cognitive needs of gifted students. While acceleration does not replace gifted programs, it's an intervention that you can combine into their program to assist a gifted student in reaching their full potential. According to the university, in their guidelines for developing an academic acceleration policy, acceleration can be implemented through curriculum compacting, dual enrollment, summer programs, AP and IB programs, or even grade-based, grade-skipping type of acceleration. Regardless of the type, all gifted students should have access to the referral forms that request acceleration accommodations. Educators and parents should be aware if enrichment and extension programs do not seem to be meeting the needs of a gifted student. Collaborating over maybe an acceleration plan may prove to be highly beneficial and a great academic intervention for a mature gifted student. So that's a wrap. That's all that I have to share with you today. I hope you have a better general feel for a gifted student and their needs and how to serve them better and appropriately in your classroom. Thanks for listening.